over a planet, okay, if you want to completely take over a planet, the first thing that you have to do is you have to take out the alpha males or the strong males from the planet. Because the strong alpha males protect the divine feminine.
If there was a difference in the family in terms of who was the darker or who was the lighter or who had the good hair or who had the bad hair, that means that racism in the political social system has entered into the parent. And the parent then transfers that racism, even in the way he or she relates to the children, onto the child, and creates in that child then an attitude toward itself and toward the world that flows from being in a particular social political position. You see, then, when the white psychologist talks about the parent and the child, they can talk as if it is the relationship between the parent and the child that makes the child what it is. However, when we talk about the black parent and the black child, we must talk about that black parent's relationship to the white world, that black parent's political position in the world.
You know what, brother? If you were to walk into any mosque in America and you just laid your hands on the first person or the third person or the fifth person that you see, you realize that you're laying your hands on a Native American. There were only 8% of the slaves that came to America. So how is it that there are so many more people that they claim are black or African American? I think they got the numbers wrong, because a lot of Native Americans are the ones that they're counting as black folks too.
The Georgia Peach too.
Oh, you're the Georgia Peach too. How do you find time to do both?
Well, you know, I'm from Macon, Georgia. I'm from there. James Brown is from there. Otis Redding is from there, and Wayne Cochran is from there. I was the best looking one to leave, so I left first. So that makes me the best looking one.
Oh, you silly. I think
something before you go from me. It's something that I've always wanted to do all my life.
Uh-oh.
And all of my life, I've always wanted to do this. I've always just wanted to host a show.
Host a show?
I've been in the business so long, and I'm the only Indian in the business today.
How do you mean you're an Indian?
The only Indian. The other one that you had out here, he's not in the business.
You spoke about the tribe being detribalized in 1881. Well, one of the main chiefs at the time was Bristol Michael, who was my fourth great-grandfather. So my personal journey has been my fourth great-grandfather being chief of the tribe when they get detribalized, me coming across his death certificate, which has him listed as colored, no longer Indian, but colored, down to me, who was not only listed as African American, but who has never been allowed to be on the federally recognized rolls. So I'm wondering if anyone could speak or would be willing to, brave enough to speak about the ongoing impact that these classifications are still having on our people today, especially in terms of causing disunity, because Narragansett, Pocasset, Pokanoket, these are all peoples, but then amongst our own peoples you get, well, you're not federally recognized, so you're not a real Indian, that sort of stuff going on.
We don't even understand where all the battles lie. There's psychological battles, there's spiritual battles going on. We're not even fighting those. We're just fighting what we think is a physical battle or some sort of political battle. But we're not even fighting on, and they're fighting hard on those other fronts. They're literally fighting for your fucking soul.
We are this beast that they are afraid of, and they have to destroy in order to protect themselves, protect their women, by extension protect their country. So the more white folk in America become a minority, the more afraid they're going to be, the more reactionary they're going to be, and the more they're going to see a need to circle the culture wagons and take us out. This is their last stance. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you really understand the essence of white supremacy, they have to do that. In their minds, they have to do that, because to submit is to die. So they are like a caged animal or animal that's been trapped in a corner. They're going to do everything within their power to survive.
Those of us who know our people's history and who know the power of that history must find some way to break through to our young.
American laws are not the black man's laws.
Well, the laws here in America were made by white people for the benefit of white people. The Constitution was written by whites for the benefit of whites. It was never written for the benefit of blacks. And when you read the Constitution, I think in Article 1, Section 2, or Section 1, Article 1, some one of the two, and it's in the Constitution, it says that it classifies black people as 3/5 of a man. 3/5 of a man, subhuman, less than a human being. It relegates us to the level of cattle, hogs, chickens, cows, a commodity that could be bought and sold at the will of the master. No, it was written by whites for the benefit of whites and to the detriment of blacks. And when a black man stands up talking about his constitutional rights, he's out of his mind.
About racism, we're talking about the white supremacy behavior of white people. That racism was the #1 mental health problem in the nation, and it was the #1 cause of other mental health problems. And I wanted to understand what this thing of racism really is all about, because it's the thing that has caused woe and misery and suffering for the vast majority of the people on this planet that are classified as non-white. And in my attempt to understand why the necessity of white people to keep saying that white is superior and that the condition of non-white is inferior, and the more I thought about it, in conjunction with an idea that a friend of mine had, that racism was a worldwide behavioral system for the maintenance of white supremacy by a small minority of people, I put those ideas together with what we know about genetics, what we know about the condition.
We have another call waiting. Hello.
Could I?
Hello. Go ahead. What's your question, please?
My question concerns, you blame it on the white man on how we came over and take your land. I don't understand when the Japanese are coming over and they're buying it, and that's okay. I don't see what this is about the Howleys coming over. You come over to our country and buy up our land too. It works both ways. I don't see how you can have this rallies and everything against the white man. This is America,
Let me just say something to this call. This is not America. This is Polynesia. Our country was stolen. That's one of your problems. You're ignorant, woefully ignorant. I am very active against Japanese ownership of our land. I have testified repeatedly at various commissions and at the legislature in opposition to any foreigner owning Hawaiian land. But you, caller, need to learn about Hawaiian history and about where you are. And that attitude that you have is the same attitude that Joey Carter has. You think you are in America. You are not in America. You are in a colony that is in Polynesia that was forcibly taken, just as, I might add, all of Eastern Europe was forcibly taken by the Soviet Union, which Americans think is a very, very bad place. The bad, bad Soviet Union. Well, the bad, bad United States of America took Puerto Rico, it took Alaska, it stole Indian land, it took Hawaii, it took Guam, it took Micronesia, Palau, and you had better learn that history because you are the recipient of an imperialist tradition.
Mr. O'Connor.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish that
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
all
right.
If a Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to walk around with these names. And therefore he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property.
Do you believe then that the violent reaction that the blacks have had to what you call the violence of white America,
the violence and the really cowardly apathy, the denial that a person like Jonathan Jackson or a person like Angela Davis or even a person like myself has antecedents. After all, we didn't get here, to America yesterday. Behind everyone you've ever heard of, every black person you've heard of, there are hundreds of thousands of porters, maids, junkies, a record of corpses, a record of disaster, which is part of the American history which Americans refuse to read. It isn't something which happened, just because a handful of black people decided to be perverse and go into the streets. They're driven into the streets. They don't have any hope.
Well, do you think that the future
from the government?
The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
It is our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life. We should accept that pedophilia is a sexual preference, a thought, a feeling, and not an act. We should differentiate between child sexual abuse and pedophilia. We shouldn't increase the suffering of pedophiles by excluding them, by blaming and mocking them. By doing that, we increase their isolation and we increase the chance of child sexual abuse.
Equality has nothing to do with whites. We don't want to be equal with the white man. He's not the criteria or yardstick by which equality is measured. He's not in a position to tell us we are equal. It's not his right. It's not his to do. Equality, we want equality. We had equality before the white man was created. We had equality before the white man came into existence. And we want equality whether the white man is on this earth or not. Equality means the opportunity to develop all of our dormant potential, all of our dormant capability. And in developing this dormant capability, the right and the ability to stand on this earth on some land of our own and bring about a civilization and a society in which we will be completely independent, complete freedom.
You know, I'm fighting every day, not just for my freedom, not just for my liberation, but for all of our liberation. Unabashedly, I fight for revolution because I think revolution is the only solution. I'm not shy about using that word. Am I conscious about what I say? I am more conscious about what I say. I can't help but be. I be faking this, oh no, I say the same. No, I think about it. Because I don't want a young person, or even an old person, to be misled, you know, because it's dangerous out there. And when people recognize their power, the power to say no, the power to say enough, the power to say, well, damn it, let's get together and change this thing, then anything is possible, you know. If that message gets out there to kids, to young adults thinking about their tomorrow, then it don't matter what they do to me, they ain't stopped me. Because revolution is my religion.
Okay, yes. We are bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money? And that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks. And it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no. See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot.
in this country that are being exacerbated by this president. But he didn't invent racism and discrimination. I'll be the first one to say that. But to have people who are not black and brown to be cavalier around this panel, I am highly offended. Okay, well, I am just highly offended by this.
All I'm asking is that we don't make it only that. The United States of America is not just about only that, but that is part of it. That was all I was saying.
Was this country, did this country enslave Africans? Did this country take away the land of the Native Americans? Did this country have Jim Crow and black codes? That's not in my imagination.
No, it's not.
And still, there are articles that are being written right now that still says that it'll take about 228 years for the average African American to catch up with the wealth of the average white person in this country. And we all have to care about it. So it is race and it is class.
But to say that our country,
the country was founded on racism and bigotry, David, and it does.
To say that America specializes.
Black men are being shot. Oh my Lord!
We shouldn't say it specializes. I don't think
it specializes in it.
So if you just, all we really have to do is just say, hey, who's behind all of this stuff that's going on? We see what's going on the surface, and we are, you know, chomping at the bit to jump on the black women who are out here, I mean, shaking and doing this and selling themselves and all like that. But wait a minute. They weren't born doing this. So who's really behind this? And I'm always saying, anything that seems like it may be non-constructive that you see black people doing, immediately go to the usual suspects. That's what we do. And that's what I do. I say, wait a minute, this looks like something that the usual suspects has come up with. Almost anything that I see black people are doing that's got a question mark on it. It doesn't even have to be something destructive. But if it looks like it might be leading to something destructive, I always say, hey, let's check this out and see what the white supremacists have to do with this.
When black people talk about racism, it's not because white people came to the shores and said nigger, nigger, nigger. They could have said nigger until their tongue goes dry. If they didn't enslave, colonize, and rape us, there would have been no problem. We would have loved that nigger word. Do you understand? Calling me a nigger isn't racism. Racism was prejudice, but when you got the power to influence my life with that prejudice. Yeah? So that's what the system of slavery was, that's what the system of colonialism was, and that's what the system of institutional racism is. This is why black people cannot be racist. I can think all I want about white people. Listen, let me finish. It's not going to affect white people in banking, it's not going to affect white people in schooling, it's not going to affect you in any institution of power. If you, as a white person, has prejudice against me, 9 times out of 10, it's going to affect me in banking, it's going to affect me in the police, it's going to affect me in all the institutions. This is why we say racism is prejudice plus power.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land, or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give.
In the months leading up to the military intervention, he called on African and Muslim nations to join together to create this new currency that would rival the dollar and euro. They would sell oil and other resources around the world only for gold dinars. It's an idea that would shift the economic balance of the world. Countries' wealth would depend on how much gold they have, not how many dollars they trade. And Libya has 144 tons of gold. The UK has double that, but 10 times the population.
If Gaddafi had an intent to try to reprice his oil or whatever else the country was selling in the global markets and accept something else as a currency, or maybe launch a gold dinar currency, any move such as that would certainly not be welcomed by the power elite today who are responsible for controlling the world's central banks. So yes, that would certainly be something that would cause his immediate dismissal and the need for other reasons to be brought forth for removing him from power.
I recently spoke at a university where a student told me that it was such a shame
that Nigerian men were physical abusers like the father character in my novel. I told him that I had just read a novel called American Psycho, and that it was such a shame that young Americans were serial murderers. It would never have occurred to me to think that just because I had read a novel in which a character was a serial killer, that he was somehow representative of all Americans. And now this is not because I'm a better person than that student, but because of America's cultural and economic power. I had many stories of America. I had read Thailand, Updike, and Steinbeck, and Gateskill. I did not have a single story of America. I've always felt that it is impossible to engage properly with a place or a person without engaging with all of the stories of that place and that person. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. Stories matter. Many stories matter.
I just ordered a darky out of this room. Do you know anything about him? From his facial characteristics, his people probably came from the Songhai tribe.
It absolutely exists right now. Are they using that technology? I asked you, do a little bit of research, look at the plummeting sperm production in black men. Sperm production is plummeting in black men. Sperm production is precisely the kind of physiological process that can be targeted by RNA interference technology. Now, is that proof that the food crops are being engineered to cause sperm production to plummet in black men? No, it's not proof. But when you connect the dots of all the other things that are being done covertly, this becomes something very likely in the realm of possibility. It would take a lot of advanced testing to find this out, and guess who controls the funding?
March 22nd, from the front porch. This is part 2 of what I'm doing. This is in sterile water, just so you can see it. And I'm going to give me a glimpse of what's going on. Check this out. Look what we're doing. Wow. See? Same jar. Let me go around here so you can see the date. I don't want to disturb it. Two strands. Okay. Just thought I'd bring this out. Okay.
It is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke. Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal, and it's been going on for too long. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
Then around 1940, the United States introduced 440 Hz worldwide. And finally in 1953, it became the ISO 16 standard. What is 440 Hz? 440 Hz is the unnatural standard tuning frequency, removed from the symmetry of sacred vibrations and overtones that has declared war on the subconscious mind of Western man. You just have to go out into the street and take a look around. What do you see? School kids, young adults, on their way to work, and what do they all have in common? iPods or MP3 players. Ingenious, isn't it? They are successfully lowering the vibrations of not only the young generation, but the rest of us as well. These destructive frequencies entertain the thoughts towards destruction, this harmony and this unity. Why 432 Hz? In 1936, the American Standards Association recommended that the A above middle C be tuned to 440 Hz. This standard was taken up as the international concert pitch. I wonder why. Believe me, they know exactly what they are doing. If one should desire to know whether a kingdom is well governed, if its morals are good or bad, the quality of its music will furnish the answer. Confucius. Music based on 432 Hz transmits beneficial healing energy because it is a pure tone of math fundamental to nature. There is a theory that the change from 432 Hz to 440 Hz was dictated by Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. He used it to make people think and feel a certain manner and to make them a prisoner of certain consciousness.
Against us, for example, or terrorists might send against us, and it successfully shot down all 5 of the drones. This is huge news because it means that in a realistic, practical setting, it's looking very promising. So it could be ready to field quite soon. So when you see the movies, or you look at comic books or television shows, when you see laser weapons, they tend to be a color, right? Red or green or something like that. Real lasers, one of the key advantages that they provide is that they are invisible. You actually can't see them. You just see this damage suddenly starting to blow something up. So if we take a look now at what the Athena did to a truck. So we're looking at a truck engine, and the Athena within seconds was able to beam right in there, heat the whole thing up, and burn through the engine of this vehicle. So if you can imagine if you were in that vehicle, all of a sudden this hole would start appearing in your engine and the whole thing would just disappear. That's what these lasers do. Now there's some other key advantages that we should mention. Let me give you 3 of them. 1, unlimited.
Know the laws of the land. Know your birthright and nationality. You are a Moorish American. Fight for your nationality. The Pope says stand up. The Pope says stand up. The Pope says stand up. Know the land. Know the laws of the land. You are an Aboriginal, Indigenous American.
How do you make that connection between the Kemetic people, the Moors, and the Hebrew?
Same people. This is one of the biggest frauds that has come down the pike that causes divisions with our people. But it's also an indication that somebody does not know history, identifying their belief systems as their bloodline identity, which is an indication that they don't even know fundamental civilization. When you go back into the ancient culture of the Asiatics, you'll find that Moor and African are used synonymously throughout the world until about the 1600s. We are the same people. We're all Ibri, falsely called Hebrew. Hebrew is a modern corruption of Ibri, but it's not a religion the way it's presented, and we're not a different people. Based on the way the Europeans have taught the books, think it's a different people with a different religion, with some kind of special relationship with the divine creator that nobody else has. When we're all brothers, sisters, cousins, and all of us can be traced to the same families.
A revolutionary is not someone who seeks to reform a system, he's someone who seeks to replace it. I'm a revolutionary. I'm not a reformist. I want the American system destroyed. It must be destroyed and has to be replaced. Has to be replaced. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Again, I'm not calling for revolution. I see it coming, and I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the problem. I've been the victim too long, so I want to be part of the solution.
To understand yourself, you must be acquainted with your history. I have said that history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day, and it is a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells you where you've been and what you've been, where you are and what you are. Most important is to give you some direction about where you still must go and what you still must be. The relationship of a people to their history is the same as the relationship of a child to its mother.
Thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, to really understand it. that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology.
But I would like to say what scares us is I think we hear violence.
The young lady said she's afraid of violence. And isn't it sad that we who have been the victims of so much violence, now whites fear violence from us? We do not have a history of killing white people. White people have a history of killing us. See? And what you fear, may I say this, sir? What you fear, and it's a deep guilt thing that white folks suffer. You are afraid that if we ever come to power, we will do to you and your fathers what you and your people have done to us. And I think you are judging us by the state of your own mind, and that is not necessarily the mind of black people.
Someone hung a black baby doll from a noose at Wacaco Square Playground near 4th and Catherine.
The American effort, which is essentially an effort to deny its past. To deny its past, I mean two things by that. I mean that, for example, we were talking about myths a little while ago. I said we made a myth out of our history. And for example, most white Americans still seem to believe, in fact, as far as I know, do believe, that they all sprang from a race of freedom-loving heroes and martyrs and pilgrims. And everybody came here because they had unquenchable thirst for freedom. And we say this very seriously, so we never heard of the history of Europe. I never heard, for example, of the potato famine in Ireland, which drove the Irish here. They wanted potatoes, not freedom.
And anytime anyone teaches you to believe in a God that doesn't look like you give them that God back.
No Negro leaders have fought for civil rights.
What do you mean
they
by
have
fought?
begged for civil rights. They have begged the white man for civil rights. They have begged the white man for freedom. And anytime you beg another man to set you free, you will never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourselves. And until the American Negro lets the white man know that we are really, really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom, our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
Well, here's the thing. White America has been raised to believe, A, the police are always the good guys, and frankly, that black lives matter less than white comfort. And until we deal with that, until we deal with the reality, because here's the problem. One person calls the police on a person of color over a barbecue in a park, sleeping in a common room at Yale, sitting at the Starbucks or whatever it is, knowing that Tamir Rice's life was snuffed because someone called the cops on a 12-year-old boy playing with a toy gun. Something that white boys do all across this country without fear of being shot. And that's a national story. You can't tell me you didn't know that happened. When John Crawford is called, the cops called on him at the Walmart, also in the state of Ohio, not to pick on Ohio, and he's standing there with an air rifle that he pulled off the shelf at Walmart. He's talking to his girlfriend or whatever, and the cops are called on him. They come, they shoot him.
You scared people, Huey. The Black Panthers scared people.
Anytime the black man attempts to change the slave image, he will scare white people.
Would you be prepared to take up a gun and kill someone in order to achieve what you would regard as your freedom?
Now I know I can.
You would?
Now I know I can. In the past I didn't. But when I saw my children mowed down in Soweto in 1976, then I realized that in order to defend that, I would do exactly the same.
Each
one teaches one. So in the same way, we can help each other understand what the war of white supremacy is all about. So no black person on this planet, and certainly in this area of the world, will be ever again saying what's happening. The only thing we will be saying is we do know what's going on, and I'll see you in the library. You do know what's going on, so we will see each other in the classrooms. We do know what's going on, so we will be serious. And somebody will say, well, when was the last time you saw any black people dancing? Well, they can dance. They're the best dancers on the planet. But during war, the people have to put the records aside and get down into the business of war and studying war so that there can be justice and peace.
A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the first Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colony.
An African-American children's birthday party. Partygoers ended up on the receiving end of one after the other racial slurs, and then they ended up staring down the barrel of a shotgun.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we shall propose further cooperative effort between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. We shall propose finally a global systems of communication satellites linking the whole world in telegraph and telephone and radio and television. The day need not be far away when such a system will televise the proceedings of this body to every corner of the world. Cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. And eventually in weather control. And eventually in weather control.
In its desperation to win the Vietnam War, the Americans turned to weather modification to make it harder for the enemy to move throughout the region by inducing heavy rainfall to muddy or destroy their dirt roads and trails. 47,000 canisters of silver iodide were dropped over North and South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Some areas supposedly saw their monsoon period extended by up to 45 days, but just 2 days after the New York Times exposed the program, it was discontinued. Operation Popeye caused the USSR and US to negotiate a ban on the military use of offensive weather modification techniques in 1977. But the treaty didn't stop countries from using cloud seeding against themselves, as the Soviet Union did in 1986 when the Chernobyl nuclear disaster sent fallout into the sky. Civilians on the ground and the Russian pilots who carried out the mission have confirmed that aircraft flew overhead, ejecting a substance into the clouds. This resulted in heavy, black-colored radioactive rain to fall in Belarus instead of onto the Soviet capital, Moscow.
About 20 feet apart. We're getting ready to make the turn now, and this will illustrate how the frequencies will be heard again on our frequency analyzer. And you can see both of the cell phone towers right now. These are being deployed all over the nation. This is a silent weapons, quiet wars system using frequencies instead of bullets. Make absolutely no mistake. The intention of a silent weapons system is to reduce the vitality of the people and to make the people ill. And many of the associated illnesses that people have been complaining about and have been experiencing from.
This is one woman's experience of living on the top floor under cell antennas for 2 months.
It started with my daughter. She initially got a rash on her leg that was sort of unexplainable, and when she was trying to explain to me what it felt like, she kept saying it was kind of funny because it wasn't hurting inside or on the skin. She said it was hurting in the skin. And then a few days later she got another rash on her arm, and then another small kind of stranger rash, and it was the same thing. And then one day in the kitchen she was holding something and she dropped it because she said it felt like the blood in her hand went cold and in a wave along her hand to her fingertips, and then her hand stayed numb for about 15 minutes. Some more of the symptoms include a sort of hissing in my ear, in particular when I'm in my apartment, but for about 3 days, anywhere I went, it would just sort of come in. I kind of felt like an antenna, and I'd sort of kind of go like, trying to find the place where the hissing or the buzzing stopped. I've not slept in my apartment since last Saturday.
If violence is wrong in America, violence is wrong abroad. If it's wrong to be violent, defending black women and black children and black babies and black men, then it's wrong for America to draft us and make us violent abroad in defense of her. And if it is right for America to draft us and teach us how to be violent in defense of her, then it is right for you and me to do whatever is necessary to defend our own people right here in this country.
We believe jobs must be offered to American workers first. Does that make sense?
They are preparing in advance. They are taking advantage of the fact that the tariffs haven't gone up yet, with lower prices now.
My administration will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American, okay?
My owner under mind control was Bob Hope, and that I was abused and used as a mind control sex slave by Ronald Reagan and a lot of different presidents, LBJ, Reagan, Ford, and I was programmed to have computerized mind files by Henry Kissinger, where I was used as an operative within the intelligence faction of the government, targeting people that he and Nelson Rockefeller had an agenda to bring in certain individuals into the fold, they called it, to work on behalf of the New World Order. And so they used me to manipulate and blackmail people in order to bring them in, people that were either wealthy, had a lot of talent, or knew something, had connections or whatever.
Or money.
The free press is under attack. Censorship and state control of media is on the rise. Social media, once seen as a mechanism to promote knowledge and understanding and solidarity, has proved to be just as effective promoting hatred and paranoia and propaganda and conspiracy theories.
But this is a NASA technical manual. MIT, the Army Research Laboratory, flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Flat Earth with a flat Earth assumption. Non-rotating flat Earth. A flat, non-rotating Earth may be assumed. A flat and non-rotating, assuming a flat Earth. Flat, non-rotating Earth. A non-rotating Earth. Flat, non-rotating Earth. Validity of flat Earth based on a flat Earth assumption for a flat Earth and a flat atmosphere. Flat, non-rotating Earth. The flat Earth model. Propagation of electromagnetic fields over flat Earth. Ballistic vehicle motion. A closed-form solution is developed for the motion of a ballistic vehicle entering the atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth.
But doesn't this mean if you're going to raise a baby, how would you be able to change your child's diaper?
Advances in technology are reaching the point where weapons are becoming fully automated. This phalanx system, for example, can respond to incoming threats much faster than a human. But as robotic systems become more advanced, machines are reaching the point where they are able to kill all by themselves.
Does that begin to expand? Do we see that same concept being used in an offensive setting or in settings where humans actually aren't supervising the operation of the weapon system as they are today?
These are questions that governments, human rights groups, and security experts are currently debating, and there's a diversity of viewpoints.
There's obvious concerns about whether the machine decision maker would be as accurate as the human, but I think there are also reasonable concerns about what happens to our sense of responsibility about mistakes when they don't feel like anyone's fault.
Terminator-like doomsday scenarios are popular in science fiction, but real-world concerns have led to a campaign to outlaw these killer robots before they can hit the battlefield.
We tested Amazon's facial recognition software by using it to compare every member of Congress to a set of mugshot photos. Here's what we found. The software incorrectly matched 28 members to someone who had been arrested. Nearly 40% of these false matches were people of color, even though they make up only 20% of Congress. Face surveillance is dangerous, biased, and primed for abuse. It poses a risk to everyone, no matter who you are or where you come from.
We learned your French. We learned your English, we learned your Spanish, we learned your Dutch, your Portuguese, your German. You learned our nothing, you called us stupid. That's white privilege. And I'm sure it probably hurts for you to hear those two words, kind of like gunshots and explosions from those commissioned to protect you with whisking past your ears. What is white privilege? It is the only 5 decades of legal acknowledgement expected to correct 400 years of white transgression. It is crack versus cocaine. Blacks receiving almost 20% longer sentences for the same exact offenses. Like, for instance, a black man without a record is less likely to get a job than a white felon, or maybe it's because we're lazy and we don't work hard enough. Like, what the fuck? 400 years in the same field literally is an incredible resume builder. It is Katrina answering the government's prayers of eugenics, Dick Cheney going fishing the next day, Condoleezza on a shopping spree, Bush in San Diego, but Kanye is the one you call crazy because, like, it only took the USA 2 days to get aid to Asia, but 5 for FEMA to get to Canal Street and Esplanade. It is the one black kid who beat the shit out of the odds, but only thanks to Sandra Bullock, Michelle Pfeiffer, and the White Shadow, so now we all can make it. It is the only time thousands of white people are cheering for the black kid to win. It is in the stadium. It is you looking at me crazy if I told you to go back to Europe, even though we didn't have a say. It is you all of a sudden having a problem with immigration, like this isn't even your nation. How the hell do you discover some shit that wasn't even missing to begin with? You Columbus our traditions.
This is South Kivu, Democratic Republic of Congo. This is the mineral capital of the world. This is also the rape capital of the world. This is also the richest country on earth. This is also the poorest country on earth in terms of GDP. And you wonder why? This place is the most mineral-rich place on earth. There's also the most charities here. Villages are destroyed and people are moved off land where there are mineral deposits underneath. And then all of a sudden a mine turns up, and at the same time NGOs turn up and united governments turn up, and those governments turn up with weapons to protect their corporate interests, so that we can have a technology industry, so that we can have aerospace industry, so that we can have a military industry. Everything comes from here. Gold, coltan for our mobile phones, cobalt for military planes. This country produces $1 billion of gold a year alone, and it's the poorest country in the world.
Had white girls twerking in high definition with multicolored hair and purple nails, but it was ghetto when we did it. Oh, I'm making you uncomfortable. Try a cramped slave ship. But wait, slavery is over now. It's just called the prison system, because, like, you're not racist because you don't use the N-word, but y'all use niggas every day. What is white privilege? It is the acceptance of bombs over Baghdad, but not over Boston. It is European history being taught as a major and African as an elective. It is learning about my people only 28 days, like I'm not black every fucking second as every white boy. With the fuck my brains out, not because I'm pretty, but because I'm pretty for a black girl. It is people thinking that Africa is one nation. It is the waving of the Confederate flag like you didn't lose the battle, and then telling us to get over slavery.
They want to preserve our leopards and our other animals, but they don't care about us. To them, Africa is a zoo of sorts. And until the day that we Africans realize that we are on our own, we are going nowhere. And very soon they are going to shut us out, if they have not shut us out already. We'll not go to the United States of America, we'll not go to Europe, and I'm happy that we are being forced to stay in Africa. Let us stay in Africa and build Africa. I mean, what does Africa lack in terms of resources? What do we lack? If it is solar energy, which continent is capable of producing solar energy to light this continent and the entire earth? If it is hydroelectricity, what can we not generate? If it is minerals, if we wanted to make bombs, if we should, where do they get their uranium from? If it is timber, what don't we have? If it is human resources, we are 2 billion of us. And we are people who have intelligence. And yet we are kept in a constant state of...
It is people saying that black people destroyed neighborhoods, but forgetting that white people have destroyed continents. It is every time I bring up my plight, some white man has to tell me that I'm crazy, but is kind enough to praise my English or say that we are all given the same opportunities, even though he has a family history of wealth, and I don't even know my family history at all. Is the justification of police brutality. Like, what did that person do? I'm sure it doesn't hurt as much when the victim doesn't look like you. It is people thinking that affirmative action is an unfair advantage instead of keeping the qualified from being unfairly disadvantaged or throwing out a qualified applicant because their name sounded too African American as Newports imported into black communities, but black boys exported for weed as big plastic asses that are called fat when we naturally have them. It is an Australian woman whose new classic of rap music is everyone who hears this poem dismisses all this truth I just spit as reverse racism. That is white privilege.
There's one thing you have to get through your mind and keep it. Nothing that ever came from the European mind was meant to do anything but facilitate European domination of the world. And I said there's no exception. Everything that was brought into this continent, everything, every idea, every so-called religion was meant to dominate and to control. The Arabs had no illusions about it. The Europeans had no illusions about it. You were the ones with the illusions. And yet every element that went into the making of every major religion in the world started in Africa. Why is it that you are so naive? You let people redress something that you invented, sell it back to you, and enslave you through it.
Nigger, bitch, you're not a human. Hey, bitch, look at me, bitch. Yeah, you're afraid. You goddamn ought to be afraid, bitch.
They are some of the most popular TV preachers in the country.
We're family here.
They urge the faithful followers to donate generously, and in return, the Lord will bring them prosperity.
I'm not going to be going to heaven and be broke when I get there.
And there's no denying some people have prospered handsomely.
Wow!
The pastors themselves, they live like rock stars with huge mansions, private jets, and fancy cars. Their lifestyles are so lavish, 6 of them have been investigated by the U.S. Senate, like Paula White, who lives in multi-million-dollar homes in New York City and Tampa, Florida. And Creflo Dollar, he gets around in style, flying in private jets to preach around the country. He owns this mansion in an exclusive Atlanta suburb.
Mr. Dollar, how do you
Not one of them would agree to an interview about their opulent lifestyle.
How do you justify your $1 million mansions and your jets to all of your donors, sir?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see you're turning on after I shocked you by telling you that prayer is neither heard nor answered by a God in the sky. Prayer is a positive mental transaction within your own mind. Prayer is what you say to yourself within yourself. Prayer is what I say about myself within myself. When you pray, you are really talking to yourself. You are talking to your own mind. You are convincing yourself of the good which you desire. When you pray, you have no one to convince but yourself. So many people waste a lot of time with this so-called religious praying by trying to convince a God in the sky to do something for them or to give them something. But I found that people don't need that. People need something that they can use. People need the truth presented to them in such a way that it will set them free.
Come arrest me or give me a fight. They're arresting me. They're arresting me. They're really de-escalating. Hey, you don't be tough, right? Stop hurt me. I'm not. Stop. Do not hurt me. Do not hurt me. You understand? Do not be rough with me. Look at them. Look at them. They're going to beat me up. Don't beat me up, you mother. Don't beat me up. Look at them. Oh, my God. I can't believe they're doing this. Oh, my God. Hey. Look what they're doing. Oh, get to the other side. I'm not listening. I'm supposed to be rough with me. You treat me like a black person. You're going to get sprayed. You're going to get sprayed. Release your hands. Put it behind your back. You understand me?
And I was absolutely astounded to see that
Practically everything that we expose here on RSE had its place on the bookshelf of this Freemasonic library.
Washington, D.C. is a Masonic city. It's laid out by a Masonic call. Every building is laid with its foundation stone by Freemasons. It was laid out as a Sephirotic tree of life in the Jewish Kabbalah, or as a Masonic coffin. Freemasonry is Judaism for the Gentiles.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1. Greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation.
Eisenhower, when he gave that speech, originally called it the military-industrial congressional complex, because Congress is tied in so deeply with the military-industrial complex, it's disgusting. But they convinced him to take Congress out of the military-industrial complex speech that he gave. Congress is very much involved in the military complex and the deep state, and you'll see in a moment why they promise us one thing and then they vote on something exactly the opposite. The lobbyists in Washington, D.C., I think spend $4.8 million a year lobbying the Congress and the Senate to get their way. We'll call it the MIC just for short. Wall Street, directly connected to the deep state at the hip, and it is so connected to the Treasury now, they're almost like business partners. And a lot of Wall Street has billions in offshore accounts that nobody knows about, connected directly to the Department of Treasury, which has a secret database on us, by the way. Most people don't know that. Treasury has its own secret database. It is open to back.
The driver's license is one of the major instruments that is used politically to sustain slavery. When they gave you that driver's license, it was to incorporate you as a corporate person, was not an instrument for identification. It has a picture that represents you, and then it has some phonetic writing on the front that sounds like the name that you have, but that's not you. The picture can't represent you, and the name does not represent you. That name represents a private corporation, or what they call often a straw man too. You notice that grammatically it's incorrect. Why is it incorrect? You capitalize nouns. If you don't capitalize a noun, then it must not be a noun. But if all the letters are capitalized, it's not a proper noun, is it? It's grammatically incorrect if it's directed at a person. Why do you think that was done? Do you think it's accidental? The fact that it expires proves what to you relative to identity? Does your identity expire? Well, why does your identity expire with the driver's license? Because it's not an identification. It's a proof of contract. It's a prima facie instrument used to regulate your economy. They listed you as Negroes, blacks, and colors as corporations and list you as foreigners, and that your working is a corporate activity for capital gains. By you being Smith, Jones, and Johnson, it automatically puts you as a ward of the state so they can impose upon you that license in the first place. You're actually paying a foreign European who you keep calling white and claiming him to be the sovereign of the land, which he's actually a foreigner, who lists you as a foreigner and then lists you as corporation under his name because you've been using his name and you ain't gave it back to them, which makes you legally bound to them. And then you made a contract of moving or driving in this artificiality. And they constantly charge you or make up laws to actually extort from you on a consistent basis. And when you don't pay them, they take back their property, which you turn around and list it and register to them in the first place. All scholars know that black is an English word. It's in the 14th century, medieval period. It is no older than 500 years old, and in its original Lower German form, it actually means pale. Now, scholars know that we're not black people. When the European calls us black, he's using it from an engineering perspective. And right here, you have black or more. Right. Then it's a noun, and it's irregular, and then it's black, which is the adjective, and you see a small case, right? Mm-hmm. Then plus more, which is capitalized because that's the proper noun. When you say black power, you just cast them right into the lowest class of society. So they're innocent victims of linguistics and law. They'll tell you in the history that black and white are legal statuses. They have nothing to do with complexion. And we keep on arguing the low status and then get mad because people treat us accordingly.
We're going to do a little test. Right. Who knows what this is?
Potatoes.
Potato? So you think these are potatoes? Not potatoes, though.
I don't know.
Do you know what this is? No? Who knows what tomato ketchup is? Yeah, that's what it's made out of.
Oh, tomato ketchup? I know that one.
The test I did with the kids today was shocking. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is?
Broccoli.
We're talking about basic stuff. Even a potato. No idea. Most of them, no idea. Okay, I want to ask a question. What is this?
Chicken nugget.
You all knew that. You're too good. Okay, what's this?
Pizza.
Those kids knew what the pizza and nugget and burger were like. Bang!
It's beyond wrong. My kids were sitting here eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch, or maybe their favorite, Lucky Charms. Now, I was a contractor for 22 years, and we used to do paint prep, do cleaning and things like that. And I'm sitting there reading a box, and I noticed that it says it contains trisodium phosphate. This, TSP, let's see, trisodium phosphate, harmful if swallowed, eye irritant, skin irritant, if ingested, call poison control. Poison control. Let's see here. Trisodium phosphate. And it's not way down here with the vitamins. It's way up here. That's on Lucky Charms.
The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the other planes are out of Fort Still, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. They must be stopped.
Operationally, it works just like a laser pointer. There's a chamber inside with special materials that release photons.
If you're looking at a boat coming in over the water, you can target exactly the engine and take out exactly the engine and not necessarily damage anything else. So, and that type of precision weapon work is something that you don't really get with conventional weapons because there tends to be more collateral damage.
Yo, this shit got hit by lightning. Heat! That shit got roasted. Look at this shit. Yo, look at the radio, the whole dash. Yo, my nigga, this lightning is crazy. You're not even safe in your car with this lightning shit.
Is it twice as much? 3 times as much? No, it's a quintillion times more. That's a 1 with 18 zeros.
In France, they had some of the first adopters of Wi-Fi. Now they're recognizing that the Wi-Fi is potentially harmful to school children, so they're getting rid of it in elementary schools.
Could where you carry your cell phone make you sick? Radio frequency emissions from the school's strong wireless network has triggered headaches, nosebleeds, and nausea.
Smart meters are replacing the analog meters on your home.
Some say such meters are making them sick.
Nobody has taken into account the cumulative radiation that we are all getting, especially children.
Electronic mind control research is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Well, the subway system in Los Angeles, meantime, will be the first mass transit system in the U.S. to use body scanners to screen passengers. The portable scanners project waves to do full body screenings of passengers walking through a station without actually slowing them down. They scan for metallic and non-metallic objects and can detect suspicious items from 30 feet away. Customers who choose not to be screened won't be allowed to ride the subway, and some riders think that's a really good idea.
Makes me feel safe, I guess. It's like, as a civilian, I think we often don't know what to look for or what we would be looking for.
The machines will be rolled out at subway stations in the coming months.
And many white people who mean right and in heart want to do right, but there are so few. If 10,000 rattlesnakes was coming down that aisle now, and I had a door here I could shut, and in that 10,000, 1,000 meant right. 1,000 rattlesnakes didn't want to bite me. I knew they were good. Should I let all these rattlesnakes come down, hoping that 1,000 get together and form a shield? Or should I just close the door and stay safe?
I think that...
You understand? The Viet Cong are not all bad, but America's still dropping bombs. In Hiroshima, the Japan wasn't bad, but she still dropped the bomb. In Korea, they weren't bad, but they still dropped the bomb. So now I'm going to forget the 400 years of lynching and killing and raping and depriving my people of freedom, justice, and equality, first fired, last hired, the lowest of low, last respected. And I'm going to look at 2 or 3 white people who are trying to do right and don't see the other million trying to kill me.
No, Idris Elba, you cannot be James Bond. You will not be 007, no matter how many tweets you put out saying, I'm Elba, Idris Elba. It's not because you're a gentleman of colour, it's because James Bond isn't. He's written as an upper-class, arrogant white toff, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, nurtured by Eton and Sandhurst and well connected by his Swiss family fortune. And it's not about talent, Idris. Many people love you, almost more than you do yourself. But please, can someone on your team come up with their own ideas or their own material? Must we perpetually crowbar in gender and colour where it doesn't fit? Our imagination is a precious thing. The way we love these characters matters, as evidenced by the outrage when someone attempts to mess with the things we love. So you see, Idris, it's not about...
Stop being afraid to be called a racist.
Just open up your heart and let that hate out.
Okay? It's just a word. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Our ancestors, the ones that went and fought for us in World War II, okay, they weren't afraid of being racist. Okay, the ones that went and fought the Japanese weren't worried about being a racist.
Oh, that silly chang chang chong talk. I can't understand you. Go back to your country, white power.
Are you kidding? It's our country. It's our birthright. It was left to us.
White power.
It was paved in our ancestors' blood for us, not from you.
If you have hate in your heart, let it out.
You got to impress us. You have to stop worrying about that goddamn word.
White power. Nigger.
Sky, of course, was black.
The thing is about you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets, you can see moons.
An unfathomable blackness.
And that when I look out at the stars and I see, so many stars and planets.
And when you're in space and you're looking into deep space and you're on the sun side of the orbit, the sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars. It's the darkest black you can imagine.
We can also see stars if we're on the dark side of Earth, and
the sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon. We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics.
The thing about Carl Sagan, billions and billions of stars, there really are billions and billions of stars.
The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was.
The thing is about you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets, you can see moons.
Shut your goddamn ass up!
Dave Williams about to move out of the Quest airlock. Those particles that you see emanating from the airlock is said by the EVA officer Paul Boehm in Mission Control to be particles of water from the crew's sublimators on their spacesuits.
There you go. Come up a little bit there. Okay.
I ride this because I have a medical condition, and you have no right to stop me and question me. No, you do not. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. Get out of my way.
The law.
You are assaulting me.
No, I'm not. You are assaulting me because you are running me over.
Shut your goddamn ass up!
Zahir used to work in the industry.
What did you do with meat that was past its best before date?
He gears up to give us a demo.
Something like this, they would take, they dip it in blood, just dabble it a little bit. Yeah. So just dabble it like that. And then as you can see, it looks a lot redder.
That's what you would do? You would take the brown meat and turn it red?
Yeah. So we would turn it red, And then if like, again, we do it as many times as possible, we just keep flipping it. We would rewrap them and put down a new sticker, which came with a new best before date that extended the shelf life.
And you won't look at ground beef the same when you hear this.
If it's really bad, if it's like this, we would dabble in a little bit of blood, throw it into the meat mincer with some redder meats, and then all together, it would make it look red. And then we put it back up on the shelf.
And people would buy this?
Yeah, all the time.
People love old shit, though.
They do, and they want to believe that people who, you know, they want to believe that people 5,000 years ago somehow knew more about the universe than we do today.
Yeah.
Just no.
Why is that? Why do they want to believe that?
I think, I don't know. For me, that's one of the great puzzles of life. Why do people want to believe that the Egyptians somehow had some access to the universe? Of course!
They definitely knew how to build some incredible shit.
Of course!
Right? But that alone,
I don't want to take that away from them.
Doesn't the physical, just the presence of these incredible buildings, leave the possibility that maybe they had some knowledge that we lost?
But if you look at the knowledge we have gleaned using the methods and modern methods and tools of science that go far beyond our five senses in our access to the world, to say that somehow they knew something that we don't using our tools, that's just false. Sorry. That's not possible.
We get down there and there's a bunch of non-native people, mostly white people, singing their own version of how they think natives sing. And I just kind of watched them for a bit.
Hey, what the fuck are y'all doing? Hey, what the fuck are y'all doing?
My heart's beating. I'm really really angry. So I started to ask questions. I said, "Whose drum is this?" They pointed me in the direction of the guy that brought it. Where are you from?
Take a turn?
No, I don't. Are you Native American?
No.
You're not. You know what you're doing is disrespectful. You're mocking Native Americans right now. It's all just made up. The guy couldn't get it. That's the Native American style drum now. He said, the Scottish have drums, Africans have drums. What if I went to a Black Lives Matter protest and dressed in African garb and did my version of drumming?
Are you going to live here?
Yeah, why do you ask?
Are all of you going to live here?
Yeah, you got a problem with that?
Well, this is our land. You can't take our land.
Excuse me, your land?
Yes, our people's land. It belongs to us. We Indians have lived here for thousands of years.
Indians? What's that?
We're Indians.
There's no such thing as an Indian. We're all humans. Oh, geez, I didn't know that such ignorant bigots like you were still around. You really need to be educated.
This land belongs to our people.
Our land is your land, and your land is my land. We live in a globalized world now, don't you know? I can't believe you don't know that. It's 1612, for heaven's sakes. Are you still living in the 1530s or something?
We Indians came here before you. You can't take the land from us.
Are you racist? There are no lands for certain people. The earth is for everybody. We're all humans. Indian is just a social construct.
This robust defense of Christianity, forgetting that his fellow Christians, people who said they were acting in the name of Jesus, gave us the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the anti-Jewish pogroms, European colonialism in Africa and Asia, the Lord's Resistance Army in Uganda, not to mention countless arson and bomb attacks on abortion clinics in the United States of America to this very day. I would like a little bit of humility from Daniel first before he begins lecturing other communities and other faiths on violence.
Pushes through the skin and ruptures the collagen and then boosts it. You look like a burn victim for a day, but then...
What are you pushing into the skin?
Well, you push in whatever the facialist would like to insert into your pores.
But what is it?
It is an extraction from a piece of skin that came from a young person far, far away, and they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby. That's what it is.
It's not like I'm lying there with little pieces all over my face. It's like, I call it the penis facial, and I think when you see how good it is to your face, you too will run to your local facialist and say, give me the penis.
There's no video of President Trump sucking a ding-dong. And so what if there was? I never sucked any ding-dongs. But I'll tell you, if they were going to blackmail me to start World War III about one, I'd say, hey, I sucked a golf ball through a freaking garden hose.
A technosexual. What exactly does that mean?
It means that I'm attracted to robots, machines, artificial intelligence.
How does technosexuality look in your life in practice? Like, how do you integrate it into your sex life and your relationships?
Generally, I view like robot porn or machine porn on my own, but my boyfriend is actually really interested in things like fighter planes, and he'll explain them to me, and that's kind of part of like foreplay.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. What would be a default fantasy for you?
Gears and pistons working.
Is there something about the way that machinery runs specifically that's sexy?
I think that a lot of the time the way machinery moves and functions can mimic the way that people have sex. There's like a rhythmic, repetitive thing to it. Maybe some part of my animal brain is latched onto that.
3 men are each facing more than 1,400 counts of animal abuse in Clearfield County. State police say that Terry Wallace, Mark Miznikoff, and Matthew Brubaker had sex with dogs, horses, a cow, and a goat on a makeshift farm in Munson. Troopers say they also found videos, recording equipment, and cameras.
I'm like a family. Brother Reese Islam here, and I'm going to give you something here. Don't call me a conspiracy theorist. That was just a term used to demonize those who question the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Stay with me. Brothers and sisters, is a street light. Of course, we all have these in our cities, or most of us, should I say. Absolutely right. Not a problem at all, right? It just might be a problem now because the U.S. government has now approved for certain streetlights in certain cities and counties to now have Wi-Fi capabilities, to charge electric vehicles, to have surveillance cameras, and, of course, light up the streets periodically. There already are surveillance cameras on many different streetlights, specifically in Watts, Compton, Chicago, Detroit, Long Beach, different places like that. They already have these cameras surveying all of us to make sure that we're not stepping out of line, or should I say out of the jurisdiction of their guns and their drugs and what have you. Said that these new streetlights cost $34 million. Better know who Big Brother is.
When you tore the Pope's picture up on Saturday Night Live, whose picture were you tearing up?
The Pope's.
I mean, what did the Pope represent to you?
Interestingly, what people don't know is that, first of all, we in Ireland knew 10 years before you all did about child abuse within the Catholic Church. We had evidence. The photo itself had been on my mother's bedroom wall all my life. I was genuinely very angry with what the church were doing. By ripping that picture, you know, I risked my career, everything. I could be a billionaire now if I wanted, if I believed in that, you know what I mean? But I don't. But I know what you're getting at, and yes, this didn't occur to me until about 6 months ago. It's my father.
Did you know you were going to do it when you went on?
Mm-hmm. So I had planned it for a couple of weeks. At the very end, I pull out the picture of the Pope and tear it up.
Threw it at the camera.
Family believed Minnie was assassinated. The controversial book, which was published last week, reveals a shocking expose of an official cover-up of a paedophile ring involving former Minister of Defence Magnus Malan and 3 other National Party cabinet members.
The gun found lying next to author Mark Meany's body is said to belong to his friend and former police colleague Brent Barnes. A suicide note was also found at the Thiescombe small holding where he was staying. But family members say Meany told them days before he died that if anything happened to him, they must know he was killed.
He has been mentioning it to us for quite a long time.
I spoke to a couple of my cousins today, and to all of them he expressed that his life was in danger, and that if anything did happen to him, we must know that it was done to him, not by himself.
They fully submerge you in a vat of pig's blood, and human urine. At that point, you're in a white robe, signifies losing your innocence. You go into another room, take a shower. You come back, you're in a black robe, sit in a chair, they pull the cowl up over your face, they read the document that you signed the night before. They show that you now have a bandaged thumb, so obviously you signed it in your own blood. They give you a wheel that has a crucifix in it. You spin the crucifix upside down, which is a symbol of human sacrifice, and you break the arms downward, which is signifies denouncing Christ.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, if you looked at this wheel, you'd be looking at it looks like a peace sign now. They take the document you signed and put it in with that, and they bind it all together. They claim that your soul is now attached to this, and they put it in the vault where you never see it again. And then there's a little party that happens afterwards, and you're officially a Satanist.
Where do they get the money? Like, is there an actual temple? And what kind of... Is there a satanic temple in Arkansas that isn't the Clintons' house? But where do they get the money? This isn't the first time I've covered this before. There's another there's another Baphomet somewhere, and it's always got the kids looking up at Baphomet. It's just really creepy. Really freaking creepy. And this is what I've talked about over and over again. Just open Satanism. And
it's getting more and more invasive. You just see it like this goo. It's like this satanic goo that's just slipping through society.
And I found these strange seals on the dollar here. They're Illuminati seals, which was a secret society set up in 1776 by a man called Adam Weishaupt. And on the back of the dollar here, you see the seal on the left-hand side. And there's an eye in the triangle. It's the eye of Horus in Egyptian mythology, now called the eye of Lucifer or Satan. The two words at the top, Annua Chaptus, stand for announcing the birth of, and down the bottom, Novus Ordo Seclorum. And people should be asking the question, what is an Egyptian pyramid doing on the back of an American dollar? What link-up is there between America and Egypt? The answer is none at all, except in the field of the occult. And thus we see we're dealing with a Luciferian plan. People need to recognize the God of Freemasonry will lead the world system into a one-world government, a one-world religion, a one-world law system, and a one-world money system.
Whoever controls Africa rules the world. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. So if you want to be number one in the world, you must control Africa. America is number one in the world. America controls Africa. When Britain ruled the world, Britain controlled Africa. And China has a vision of becoming the number one superpower in the world. China is moving now to take control of the African continent and all its strategic resources, including its human resources.
So in the 1930s, they made tinctures. What were they making the tinctures for, and why were they doing these tinctures?
Well, I mean, the medicinal uses of hemp are just numerous. The hemp helps, well, we can talk about the cancer effects of hemp, but it helps with inflammation. It's very anti-inflammatory. It helps with seizures. It's very effective with PTSD for the vets that are coming back that have post-traumatic traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. Very effective at treating that. It's an anti-inflammatory. But then the uses of hemp for cancer, what I've studied, because of my book, Cancer Step Outside the Box, and the number of cancers, there's about a dozen different cancers that have been studied in depth with medicinal marijuana, with hemp. And so the studies, from brain cancer to prostate cancer to pancreatic cancer, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, prostate cancer, it's amazing.
Educare, educo, draw out that which is within. That's the meaning of the word educate. The Latin derivative of the term educate, educare. To draw out that which is within. Once you lay the foundation of the basis of who you are based on your nature and the knowledge of self, you then turn to the external to find your place in the world. We are not down here trying to overthrow this white boy. You're down here trying to raise up God in yourself.
The difference between black men and white men is this. We move through the world playing defense. We don't have the capacity to play offense. Like, we can't move because we are constantly looking for the moment when you're going to be disrupted. So you walk through the world very aware that the world views you a certain way. So you gotta play defense, and you gotta play it real smooth. When you don't get disrupted like that, you walk through the world going, what can I build there? How can I make this work?
If I feel it's denigrating, I won't do it. And if I feel that I'm going to do it, then I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
Lear had just the project for Esther's abilities. He, Michael Evans, and writer Eric Monty began to develop Monty's The Black Family script, but they soon reached a creative impasse.
One note that I got every meeting was, you got to get rid of the father. A strong black man is not funny in a sitcom. And I was in the no, we got to have the father.
The feminization of black men in America. Now, there's no better way to commit genocide on a people than to stop them from procreating. And the way you do that is you turn their men into homosexuals. Now, if you notice, they do this by putting your favorite rapper in dresses, putting your favorite rapper in tight jeans that women wear. You understand what I'm saying? Another way they do this is by feminizing your favorite football players or your favorite basketball players, you know, your Cam Newtons, and, you know, you put them in very fitted clothing, you put them in very tight short shorts, and you say that this is manly. Now, that is not manly. First of all, let me say this. Another way that you do this is by convincing the children that it is okay to be gay.
This 8-year-old boy spends hours applying makeup and dressing up in heels to transform himself into his altered drag queen ego.
And you do this by putting it in their TV shows, in their cartoon shows. You do this by putting this on Empire, favorite TV shows where everyone in America is watching. Keep your eye out on that, because they're trying to feminize our men to stop us from breathing.
Despite some misgivings, Lear took the script to Esther Roll. The actress agreed to star in The Black Family under one condition. The father had to stay in the script.
I introduced the black father to this country. There never had been one in the whole of the country. And I risked my job by saying I won't do it unless you give me a husband for my children.
When black people start talking about race, some white people get very uncomfortable.
There's a lot of people that have to work on themselves. I mean, when we
there's a lot of people who sit in their cottages
and
in their homes and don't have an experience like others and think that it's, well, you know, let me swipe my Visa card and make a donation, but I don't live this experience. What are we doing to change the current circumstances? We just had a Pope say he's not saying I'm sorry to Indigenous Canadians when he said that in 2015. It is happening right now.
I'm not saying
it's got to change. Yes, we forgive. I believe in Jesus.
Why
do
are
unto
you
others as we shall
attacking
do
me,
unto
Julie?
you.
Why are you attacking me? No, I totally get what you're saying, and I have.
Hold on,
I
we're
have
live right now. Why are you attacking me?
I'm not attacking.
The truth hurts. I didn't say anything to attack you, Jeannie Becker. I said nothing about Jeannie Becker.
No, I'm just saying you're.
Did I say anything about Jeannie Becker?
I just feel that you're speaking to me like I don't believe that. I totally get what you're saying.
Let me tell you what you just said. I feel like. So whatever you're feeling, take it to the altar, because I'm not the one that's responsible for your feelings.
This appropriation argument is getting way out of hand. I'm having to fight racists on Twitter. One guy wrote, you people are out on the streets in our countries shooting and stabbing people. Tell them to stop. How about you tell your people to stop shooting up schools and Las Vegas conventions? See what happens when you generalize, motherfucker?
Surveillance video shows Rocco being denied entrance into the Little Red Corvette bar at Tequila Cowboys. He then encountered Cameron, who was with a friend. Rocco attacked Cameron and fatally stabbed him in the neck. He was then seen hiding in the bushes and later taken into custody after he tried to flag down an officer for a ride to the North Hills.
I want to talk to you guys in this video. It's been so long. If it was possible.
Yo me vine por ti, mi amor, y papi, vete, mi amor, yo me vine por ti, yo no mi hijo está traumado,
Maybe if homeless people took care of themselves, looked pretty, we would want to help them. But I don't help yellow teeth. Well,
never understand why homeless people smell of piss when you can literally piss anywhere.
I was enjoying a latte when I saw a hobo girl across the street. I almost vomited. Get back on your side of the bridge, no one likes you.
I hate seeing homeless people standing in the cold, shivering. Be glad when the light turns green. Well, that'll make it go away, won't it?
If homeless is where the heart is, then are homeless people heartless?
Wow.
Far from it.
Some of the most generous people I know have no money. And that's how it should be. When we have no money, it's a different lifestyle. When you see the old people, there's no, in our language we have no such word as please or thank you, because it is what is expected of us is that we share and we give what we have. Today we have to say please, we have to say thank you, we have to beg for things. In the old days it was just a giving thing that we would share things. That was a part of who we are. And not only for Aboriginal people, I expect people all around the world would do the same things before money.